donuts.
Welcome to Poison Donuts in Paradise, Session 14. And as you can see, there is no audio. And if you're not a lip reader, you probably won't understand what we're saying. So, I get to recap the entire session in this hopefully short video. PC's bought some magic items and some gear to start off. Sully and Rothgar each got Masterwork plate mail. Sully purchased the Pearl of Power, which I'm not really sure what it does, but we'll find out. Theria purchased a magic whip, +1, which has the ability on a hit to do charm 3 times a day. It also came with some fuzzy handcuffs and some back issues of Gnome Erotica, which Lincoln did write down on his character sheet. Soul Wrench needed to get an upgrade, and I wanted to kind of RP that with the whole group, so I exchanged some emails with Mike during the week, and Soul Wrench had a particular vision, which he heard a gnome's name, and so he was to seek him out. So he goes to the Drunken Gnome, which is very famous here in Kornberg, a gnomish city. Oh, and also Soul Wrench is walking around the city in the drapes that he was given, and we call him Dr. Drape. And they know where he is. He works at Fishing the Day Away. When he gets there, he meets a gnome named Ramble Roll. Yeah, Ramble Roll. Who shows him a picture of a very poor drawing that looks like Soul Wrench. So he's had a vision too. Ramble Roll takes him to his home, which is a gated community in Kornberg. All the gnomes sort of live together. Homes are 1 or 2 stories. There's a lot of different balconies. The road they're walking on has a lot of different walkways that go over top 20, 40 feet in the air. So he takes him to his home. Obviously, Soul Wrench can't get inside because he is a Warforged, over 6 feet tall. Ramble Roll has got Soul Wrench outside his little home, and he uses a blanket or a tarp to cover up because he doesn't want all the gnomes knowing what he's doing. That's when the old neighbor comes out. His name is Fossfeller. So he's an old gnome. Fossfeller comes out. He's the neighbor. He pulls up a chair and sits down, and he's smoking a pipe. The pipe smells like stinky, moldy socks. This is important because the last time the PCs smelled this particular smell was in the Underdark in the City of Whispers, where the drow turned out to be a Rakshasa. So they become suspicious. Ramble Roll comments to Fossfeller that, why is he smoking that opium? That stuff stinks. Fossfeller says, it's cheap, and that's why he smokes it. But Theria decides that she is going to enter his house and look around. Well, she wants to go down an alley. Now, in my mind, there are no alleys in where the gnomes live in Kornberg. But if Lincoln wants an alley, there's an alley. So Lincoln goes down the alley, and it's narrow. She gets to a window, takes off some potted plants, then goes to enter, which she rolls a 1. This sets off kind of an alarm. I think Theria ended up trying to make a cat noise, but Fossfeller was kind of ignored it. He didn't care. So Theria waits and then enters the home. Finds some kind of knickknacks and stuff in there, and then finds a desk. She also smells some potato and beet soup cooking. She goes to the desk. She finds some kind of papers for a pension from the Kornberg government that Fossfeller's getting, and sees some paperwork from the hospital about a rash that he had treated. She hears a voice. It's a woman, presumably Fossfeller's wife, who's cooking. She attempts to go upstairs. Theria rolls another 1. She steps on the first step. It's very creaky, makes a real loud noise, and that's when Fossfeller's wife comes out and sees her and didn't realize she had a guest, and invites her back and to have some potato and beet soup, which they do. Theria explains to her that She thought that there was a fire, and that's why she came into the house. Of course, Fossfeller's wife has no reason to doubt that she's not telling the truth. She's just happy to have somebody there. So after that ends, Theria goes back out the way she came, and Fossfeller's wife comes out of the home. She sees the rest of the PCs out there waiting for Rambo Roll to fix Soul Wrench's upgrade and offers them some beet and potato soup, which Hrothgar asks if you have any meat. She returns with some beef jerky. Then everybody wants beef jerky. Fossfeller's not happy because now they're giving away his beef jerky. So as Rambo Roll is finishing his upgrade, he notices there's some loose wiring. He goes and fixes it, and then he says, "Do you hear that?" And he steps away. He's like, "Did you hear that?" Then he gets a cone and puts it to Soul Wrench's arm and says, "I heard something." Then Soul Wrench hears the voice. He hears the voice of the essence of the chain demon that he killed. It's now linked with his sword. He's the only one that hears it. So the PCs see him pull up his arm to his face, talking to it. This should be an interesting role-playing aspect in the future, and I can't take credit for it. Kurt emailed it to me and said that'd be a good idea, and I can't agree more. It was a great idea. So that was kind of their shopping and stuff. So then we pick up the PCs. They're at the Puck Mutton Hot Springs Resort, which overlooks the city, and the city lights mimic the outside, so it's roughly 5 a.m., and so it's dawn. Theria, who is meditating, is woken by a noise down below. She sees people in blue uniforms kind of stirring about, and then they start warming up. It's a band. So Theria goes down there. Hrothgar joins her. He wakes up and, of course, starts drinking. So they go down there to find out what's going on. Theria finds out this is Mantro the Third, and this is his band. And they are warming up. They are getting ready to play for his arrival. So her intent is to meet this Mantro. She rolls, finds out that she's heard of him. He's fairly famous. He lives in Lindbergh, but not a whole lot is known about him. He's kind of been in seclusion since the Gith War ended. So Sully, of course, is woken by this, and he is not particularly happy that a band is warming up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Now, he casts slow on the band. Most of them fail. So when the band begins to play for Mantro's introduction, as he's coming into the Hot Springs Resort, the band is off. And Mantro's confused. The band leader is confused. They don't know what's going on. At this point, Hrothgar realizes the band is distracted, so he finds a chest that is sitting there, this is their equipment that the band is loading. He goes in it and sees a blue band leader hat similar to the one that the band leader is wearing, probably an extra. And, of course, he takes it and puts it on. So once Mantro enters the resort, Theria speaks with him, and Mantro, of course, agrees to have lunch with her later. As Hrothgar and Theria are headed back to the room, a messenger from the governor has arrived, and he's knocking on the door. And, of course, who opens the door? Soul Wrench. And he stands there, a huge warforge, and asks what, as fire is breathing out of his mouth. It terrifies the poor gnome, but the gnome says the governor is ready to see you now. Of course, this is 5 o'clock in the morning. So the PCs all gather. They come downstairs. They're going to see the governor. And as they're in the lobby of the Hot Springs Resort, the band is in there practicing. Theria thinks about taking some sheet music and just changing it, but she figures they've endured enough torture. They make their way to Governor's Mansion, and I describe it as there's some marble and stone, and there's, stained glass. Lincoln asks, is this kind of like new money? Or I said, no, it's just tacky. Once they get in, they realize they see some pictures. There's some paintings of the old governors. There's a tour going on, and they enter this room. The room has a pool table, a dartboard, and an inflatable, bouncy castle. The governor is getting updates from different people, and they're in line. The first update is about his speech, because today is the 75th anniversary of the opening of the bridge across the abyss. He's looking at his speech. It's 3 sentences long. The governor tells his writer, presumably, that's going to bore everybody. You make it shorter. The next person he speaks to says there's a gnome loose in the city that's a world treasure hunter, and they are not welcome here in Cornburg. And they are very concerned. He slipped past the guards. And only time will tell what happens with him. So next up are the PCs. The governor then realizes that this is the group that helped capture the Traveler. Now, Traveler has never been captured by anybody that they know of, other than this individual called Osric. So the governor is pretty shocked that this has happened. Another messenger comes in and tells the governor that the spinning top ship has arrived. Now, the PCs have seen this one other time, and it usually means that important people are associated with it. A few minutes pass, and a Duergar walks through the wall of the mansion into the room. He is wearing a feather cloak that's missing some feathers, and every time he walks, a little feather falls to the ground. And he's got a beard and some goggles that he has pulled up. This is Osric. Osric is obviously, he's very irritated. He has come here because they've heard they've captured a Traveler, and he's the one that does that. So the PCs want to know what he's doing there. He said that's what he's here to do, just capture him, and send them back. And he wants to know where he is. The governor explains that this Traveler is being held in an anti-magic chamber just below them. So Osric jumps through the floor and vanishes. So then the governor takes the PCs down below. They go through some different corridors and then secret passageways, and I tell them this is kind of like, it gets to the point where it's almost pointless the amount of times they're doing this. So then they finally enter the chamber down below. Hrothgar's magic tankard does not refill, so that's why he stands right outside the door. They enter, and there's one chair in there with the Traveler, who they know is Danville, laying on the ground, and he's wearing a cloak with holes in it, and smells like excrement, because that's one of the cloaks that was left with him. The governor gets a stick from the guards, like a long stick, and kind of pokes at Danville. Danville kind of rouses, and he's kind of out of it. He looks in rough shape. He sits on the chair. Osric appears in the room and says, "This is not a Traveler." He pulls a wooden sword from its sheath. It's got some water on it, looks like, drips off. He hits him with the flat side of the sword, right in the face. Knocks him off the chair, he lands on the ground. He is in pain. Leaves a black mark. Osric stands there and stares at him, looks at him for about 10 seconds, and says, "Nope, not a Traveler." Osric knows that the PCs have met Steve. In the conversation that the PCs have with Osric, they find out that Osric worked with Steve, the Traveler, who they've met a couple of times. And together they were the ones who captured Travelers. And Carl is the only one they have never found. He tells the PCs that when he sees Steve again, he should know better and not to hang around so much to cause problems. And as he's leaving, walking through the wall, he says, "Yeah, and if you got a wand, get rid of it." Well, the PCs did get a wand the last time they met Steve. So the governor, unfortunately, realizes that this is not a Traveler and has Danville taken out to be released. He also goes over to Sully and takes his badge that was given him by the Turt team and replaces it with a participation badge. The PCs are trying to decide what to do next. So they say, well, let's go over to the university and check on that wand. When they're headed over to the university, they're walking through the halls, and they notice some zombies being taken out on gurneys. It's not the professor. The professor they meant to meet, I couldn't remember his name, so they met with a different professor. That professor was working on a thesis, so he handed it off to somebody else. It's Professor Paddlepod. So they have the gnome who's guiding them around open the door to Professor Paddlepod's office because they're afraid of what will happen. So he lets him in. I describe it as a circular office. It's got lots of books. There is a ladder on wheels so he can climb up and check whatever books he wants. There's also steps that lead up to like a loft area. And the wand is on the table. He says to them that it's pretty cheaply made, it's not very good, and I've mentioned that many times, it's cheaply made. Danville shows up. He is wearing just a regular cloak that the governor's mansion has given him. He wants to tell the PC something. He says, ever since I met you guys, I've had my cloaks burned. I've had them soiled. I've gotten mummy rot. I've passed out. I woke up and thought my hand was missing, but it really wasn't. I've been accused of being a traveler. I've had some ooze dropped on me. I've been, had a net thrown over me. Been dragged to Kornberg. I've been put in some kind of cell. I've had about 7 body cavity searches. I think the last one I blacked out on. It's been an absolutely miserable experience. And this is the most time I have ever felt alive in my life. And I'm joining the group. I'm tired of writing about stories. I want to live them. So now that we have Danville with us, they give him a dagger. So now it's time for the first combat of the night. 8 shadow demons show up. Now Hrothgar is being followed for this cloak. There's been 1 shadow demon. There's been 2 shadow demons. There's been 4 shadow demons. Now there's 8 shadow demons. Shadow demons attack, but the other thing they do is on their movement action, they attempt to pass through the victim with a Constitution save, which Hrothgar has made every single time. But now there are 8 of them. So I won't bore you with the battle, just that Sully has got a new spell called Banishment, so he removed 2 of the shadow demons, and Hrothgar made every single con save. In fact, I started having the shadow demons attempt to go through other PCs, and they made their con save. I'm wondering if the shadow demons even have this power. But during the fight with the shadow demons, at one point, I was going to have a spellcaster mage show up. So he shows up on the loft. He's got horns, a dark cloak, and Sully banishes him too. So much for that. During this time, Danville is in the hallway and he's killed 2 zombies. So the other 2 shadow demons show back up because due to the concentration of the spell, and they get rid of them too. At this point, I really wasn't sure what else to do. I was kind of looking for some kind of other creature that this wand was summoning, and couldn't really decide, so why not a flaming skull? So a flaming skull appears. This is when things went very weird. Theria decides to grapple it with the whip. Successful. It's captured, floating in the air. And she pulls it close to the room. So the skeleton just breathes fire. Soul Wrench decides that he's got a spell that takes a minute that he wants to use. So they need to hold this thing for 10 rounds. Well, this has turned out to be like a Ghostbusters thing where they're opening a trap and they're holding it there. I think I used the fire breathing thing a couple times and then rolled to see if it recharged. It did not. Then I tried another effect on Theria, which didn't work. Rothgar's trying to decide whether he wants to kill this thing or not. In the meantime, Danville and the professor have both been hit with the fire and injured, which is not surprising that Danville is down again, considering everything that's already happened to him. So Sully decides that he's going to banish it and then release it. So then it appears in this trap.
Ghostbusters!
This is when things got interesting. I did not know where they were going. So they want to question it. They find out that this creature, the skeleton, his name is Hellion, and he reports to Asmodeus. Theria can also speak Infernal as well as Soul Wrench. Theria wants allies, so wants to know if Hellion can get Asmodeus to help them, which I thought was very interesting. So instead of killing it, they release him, and he goes to see what he can do. He also mentions the only reason he was there because he was called there. Also, Rothgar has broken the wand, so no other creatures show up. So they find out Danville is alive, and they heal the professor too. And actually, before Hellion leaves, as he's going out through the top of this room, he spots some books and sets them on fire. Now, I didn't say what they were, but they're probably... And it was getting really late, so they return back to the resort. Soul Wrench is stopped by the gnome in his pajamas and wants to see him later to test out the bouncy house. That's right. I almost forgot about the incident with the bouncy house. So after the PCs find out that Danville is not a traveler, which they knew all along, they go back up to the main room. The bouncy house is there. Sully decides he's tired. He's going to go to sleep. So he tries to stealth away, but everybody sees him. So he's sleeping on the bouncy house. Now, Mike talks about his character walks over. Soul Wrench is studying the bouncy house. He's looking at it. He's trying to decide if he really wants to go and jump on it. And I said, do you need to make a save? And he's like, do you want me to? Of course. So he rolls and fails. So he runs up and does a cannonball. And I rolled percentage to see if this bouncy house would support a Warforged. It did not. He busts it. It starts to deflate. Sully's still asleep. Just kind of rolls into the center with Soul Wrench. The governor is not happy. He sends a messenger. And then a gnome appears in his pajamas. This is the person who designed the bouncy house. The governor says, you need to design a better bouncy house. And he points at Soul Wrench. If he can't enjoy the bouncy house, who can? And sends it out. Pretty much that's all that happened. I'm sure there's some other things that I forgot, but hopefully that the next session will work and blah, blah, blah. There's going to be a lot of editing. This shit.